Hey everyone, this is the Halifax Real Estate Podcast. My name is Jason Paul, and I'm a licensed realtor on the Jamie Green team at Keller Williams Select Realty in Halifax, Nova Scotia. I'm here to help you gain a better understanding of real estate in Halifax and to introduce you to a wide variety of wonderful people that work in or with our industry as well. Today's guest is Richard Bureau, named partner and founder of Morris Bureau Barristers Solicitors law firm in Halifax. Richard has been practicing real estate law for the past 35 years, starting out at McKinsey Cooper before founding Morris Bureau in 1991. Please welcome Richard Bureau. How you been?
I'm good. You know, it's been busy. The market's hot. We're getting a lot of calls after hours on the weekends. People are calling me up on a Thursday saying, yeah, I'm going to list my house. Saturday morning, I'm getting a call. They're looking at 3 offers or 2 offers. It's a busy time to be a real estate lawyer for sure.
I'm shocked it's not Friday morning.
There you go. Yeah.
I've had clients this week write 3 different offers, no conditions.
Yeah.
All cash payment. And we've lost every time. And they've decided to step away from the market because they just can't get in.
Yeah, it's tough, you know. Plus, you know, it's easy to sell your place, but you've got to have a place to buy, right?
Oh.
So that's the problem. So I'm sure lots of people aren't listing because they're concerned about being able to buy.
Yeah, because there's no house for sale.
Yeah.
So if anyone wants to sell their house.
There we go. Yeah.
So I got to ask, why law?
Well, it's an interesting question. It's a long story, but originally I was accepted at Western to do my MBA and kind of wrote my LSAT on a lark and got into Dalhousie Law School. Thought, well, I love Halifax. I'm going to stay here. I've been here for so many years. So I got a letter from Western saying I could postpone, do my law degree first, and then go to Western for my MBA. So I did my law degree. And after my second year, my parents had a lawyer out in Sackville who was working on this case that was getting a lot of publicity. And he needed some help. I went out and worked on the case for about 6 months, 6 weeks, sorry. And, you know, like rallies and everything. And I said, oh, this is what I want to do. And I ended up doing real estate law, which has nothing to do with with that at all. But that's kind of how I got into it.
Yeah. And what got you into real estate law?
Just when I started out, you know, I was with a large firm downtown, went to a smaller firm that did a lot of real estate. And one of my first clients had, you know, 500-600 acres and was subdividing it out in Fall River and was subdividing it and needed someone to do it. And it just kind of rolled from there.
Was that for the development in Fall River?
It was in Waverley, actually.
Okay.
Big subdivision out in Waverley. And it started with that. And, you know, you're starting out, you're joining referral clubs and doing everything you can to get your name out there. And just seemed to click with real estate agents a bit more than maybe some of the other people in the club. And that's where it came from. And, you know, I've dabbled in real estate too. So I really enjoy real estate, buying, selling, you know, investing.
Yeah.
I've done all of those sorts of things all over the peninsula of Halifax and really enjoy it.
Okay.
And it's still a hobby and an interest of mine. So
yeah,
I'm still at it 35 years later. I was 5 when I started, obviously.
Of course.
Yeah.
Now, whenever I'm saying down with a first-time home buyer or a buyer in general, and they're trying to educate themselves in the process, I always tell them that they need a specific team around them to help them buy a house, being a realtor, home inspector, sewer line or septic inspector, home insurance agent, and a lawyer. Now, out of all those individuals, you actually only legally need a lawyer for their role in the process. So what is a lawyer's role in the buying process?
Yeah, great question. I mean, you know, people, it's funny. I've had people call me and say, I need to hire you to witness some documents. You know, and then they show up with mortgage instructions and all kinds of things. I mean, a lawyer has a big role in the purchase of a home. I mean, homes don't cost $250. You know, this is a big purchase for most people. It's the largest purchase in their life. We have 3 roles. The first one, the most important one, is we're the protector. You enter into an agreement. It's my job to protect you, to make sure that the agreement protects and gives you what you think you're getting. So I'm going to protect your interest to make sure you get that house as you've agreed. The second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to teach you. So I'm going to explain to you all of the process of buying a home, which is fairly complicated. I'm going to make sure you understand that there are adjustments for fuel and taxes, that there's deed transfer tax, that the process on closing day of a pre-closing inspection and when you get your keys and when you can move in. So I act as a teacher. And then the final thing is I'm kind of a coordinator, right? I got to make sure that the money that you're borrowing shows up, that the real estate agents get paid, that the final inspections get done and reported, that I deal with the lawyer on the other side for the vendor or the purchaser to make sure they're comfortable with what's going on, that they send me the proper documents if you're buying or selling,
Of course.
to make sure that everything happens on the day in question. So three roles: protector, teacher, and coordinator. That's what I would say a real estate lawyer does.
I love it. Now on APS, so for anyone who doesn't know, the APS is the agreement of purchase and sale. It's the document that you write, submit an offer on to buy a house. You have the role of lawyer review. It's its own condition. And what is the role of lawyer review? Like, how does that work from start to finish for you? And when I give you a client and it's say, hey, Richard, here's my buyer. He hasn't accepted the agreement of purchase and sale. He needs a lawyer. I'm recommending you take over.
Yeah, so, really important step in the process because, as I said, as a protector, I want to review the agreement.
Yeah.
Then I'm going to have a discussion with the client and say, hey, this is what the agreement obligates you to do. Do you understand that? So that if they say to me, oh, I didn't realize that, we can still opt out of the agreement if that's necessary. And then as a teacher, I'm going to take them through the process of the agreement and make sure they understand exactly what's going on. So in particular, deadlines for financing to get that inspection, to get the septic system or the pipes inspected. All of those things, get the house appraised so the bank will determine whether or not they're going to lend money. I'm going to review that agreement. I'm also going to do a couple of extra things. I'm going to look at things like restrictive covenants and easements and explain to you, if they're relevant, the ramifications of if you're buying a home with a shared driveway, what that means, or if you're buying a home with restrictive covenants, as absurd as you can't have cows grazing on the front lawn. And then the final thing I'm going to do during that lawyer review is I'm going to talk to you about, especially if you're a purchaser, what do you want to do with the property? You want to run a daycare in it? We better make sure you can do that. You want to divide it into 6 units and rent it out? We better make sure you can do that. So that's the lawyer's role, to review the agreement, to basically, in a nutshell, make sure, in the case of the purchaser, that they're satisfied with what they're purchasing. In the case of the vendor, to make sure that they can sell the property. So an example for the vendor would be, sometimes those conditions have an extended period of time.
Yep.
So, they make the offer on July 1st. They've got until August 30th to get financing. The property's not closing till September. That's an absurd example, but what I would point out to the vendor is, you realize your house is now off the market for 2 months.
Yeah, of course.
So we may encourage them to shorten that time period. So it's that sort of thing, whether it's the vendor or the purchaser, making sure they understand what the agreement means. And if something needs to be changed or wording needs to be clarified, then it's my role to get that done in that time frame. So one of the things we pride ourselves on here at Morris Bureau is we get the agreement, get in touch with that client right away. Don't wait till the last day for the lawyer review. Let's get that in early, so if there's something needs to be fixed, we can fix it before this gets too far.
Of course.
Yeah.
Now, you touched on a few things over that, but I'm going to pick apart a few things.
Sure.
Easements and right-of-ways, because not a lot of people understand what an easement or right-of-way or even know what it is.
Yeah.
But it's important to know that. So what is a right-of-way? Give me an example.
Yeah, so a lot of times, when subdivisions are created, so when 100 acres is turned into 500 lots or 300 lots,
Yep.
the developers, instead of setting parcels aside for everything, allow things to go over other things.
Yep.
So, for example, they allow Nova Scotia Power to run lines over properties. They allow a street to go down the middle and maybe take 5 feet from the front of everybody's lot.
Yeah.
These are easements. These are right-of-ways. You know, you go in the peninsula of Halifax, you're going to see these shared driveway agreements where 2 lots close together. Obviously, at some point, it was a bigger lot, subdivided in half. The developer put up 2 houses, and they share the driveway. So these are the sorts of things that we look for. And it doesn't necessarily mean it's a problem. I just want people to understand an easement means you have the right to cross over the land. You don't own it. You can't park your car on it. You can drive your car across it to get to where you're going. People have to understand the difference. And so in most cases, it might be a well easement to run a line from a well. Yeah. It might be a power easement to allow the power company to put
set up a line
or corner or run a line across your property. Yeah.
I know one great example of a right of way or an easement is in South End, Halifax, right by English Street School, is that they have an easement behind some of those houses that allows for a horse-drawn carriage to be pulled through because it was made in like the early 1900s. Yeah.
we see that, right? But you know, great example, because I'm going to explain to the client who might look at that and go, "Awesome, I'll be able to take my car down there." No, you can take your horse-drawn carriage down there, not your car. So, you know, a good example, and they exist, especially in older subdivisions. The more modern subdivisions, easements would be things like everybody has access maybe to the lake. Yeah. Down an easement at the end of a cul-de-sac in the subdivision or something like that. The newer subdivisions tend to have less easements, although they may have easements for power poles and things like that. It's the older parts of the city where we have to be, usually the easement is a bit more detrimental to the property value, and we have to look at that a little more carefully.
Of course. Yeah. Now, with restrictive covenants, they're a different thing altogether. Yeah. But when it comes to subdivisions, and I have a buyer and we're working to find them a house in a subdivision, I will always request restrictive covenants because they are there to protect the homeowner's value.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and that's, I'm glad you do that, Jason, because it's amazing how often we get an agreement of purchase and sale, and the purchaser doesn't realize that there are restrictive covenants. Okay. You know, look, 9 times out of 10, you don't want cattle grazing on your front lawn. You don't need to put up a big neon sign out front, and you don't want to do repairs to your 18-wheeler in the driveway. So the restrictive covenants are good. But it's important that we make sure you've reviewed them. Yeah. And if you have any questions, we answer them. For example, some restrictive covenants do not allow a home business. So yeah, of course. You want to run a daycare, you've bought 2 acres of land in a large subdivision, you're thinking, wow, this is going to be a great daycare. Can't do it. Can't run a home business from there. So it's important that we review. Again, it all comes down to, what do you want to do with the property? Yeah. Do the restrictive covenants allow that? Does the easement allow that?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And for anyone looking for clarification, when I say that they're there to protect the homeowner's value, as Richard said, if you had someone doing a truck repairs in their own garage and someone spills oil, or like if someone erects a giant neon sign and your neighbor does that, that could dramatically affect your home value. And restricted covenants are to protect and promote everyone's home value, so that when you go to sell, you're not actually losing money.
And sometimes, Jason, it's things like you have to build a minimum size house. Yeah. You know, so again, you don't want to build a 3,000 square foot home for $500,000 and then have a guy put up a 500 square foot home beside you. It can affect your property value.
Yes,
so
it
you
can.
Want to make sure that is similar for everybody, right? So that's a good thing.
Now, we touched on the lawyer review rule. Yep. I always get this question on closing day, because closing day is the day where the money's going to be transferred, keys are being given to the buyers, assuming all goes well. Now, how closing day works, for those of you who don't know, is you'll go in with your realtor and you'll do a pre-closing inspection. Walk through the house, make sure there's no holes in the wall. Make sure you buy it in the same condition as it is, and you're going to say yes or no if you're okay to proceed to close. Now, what happens when the client, and you get the email and get the call saying, we're happy, send the money. Now, how does that day typically work for you guys?
Yeah, so 3 or 4 days before we've met with the client, they've signed all the banking documentation. We've set it up with the bank that the bank's going to wire or deliver a check to us, usually midday on the day of closing, because most banks don't open till 10. If they're in Ontario, that's 11 our time, so we're going to get funds 12 or 1 o'clock. We've made arrangements with the other lawyer. We've confirmed how much money we need to send, or in the case of a sale, how much money we're going to receive. That's all agreed to. We've made arrangements with the real estate agents, either that the keys are going to be exchanged when we confirm it's closing, or keys have been delivered to us and we're going to provide them to the purchaser. And then once we get the okay, hey, Richard, everything's great, we then put that process in action, which allows for the transfer of money in exchange for the documentation. To be honest, usually the documentation comes over a day or so in advance, and we're just told to hold it in trust until we pay for the property in the case of a purchase, or in the case of a sale, we send it over and say, hey, hold that. We'll tell you when you can release it once we get our money. So that's what happens. A lot of people think, oh, I got to be at the lawyer's office on the day of closing. No, other than to pick up the keys, it's very rare that we see our clients on closing day. We'll talk to them to confirm the closing went well. But other than that, and maybe to congratulate them at the end, but other than that, we don't have much interaction with the client. It's all between the lawyers making sure everything happens.
Do you guys get the keys? Because that's usually a realtor thing.
Yeah, no, not often.
I was going to say.
There are examples where we get them, and to be honest, it's very inconvenient. The poor client has to come back to the lawyer's office to get keys. So we encourage the real estate agents to do that. And 9 times out of 10, they will. Sometimes we'll get a package will arrive with keys. We'll warn the client, hey, we got your keys and everything. You're going to have to come back as soon as you own the property. And let's not forget, usually you own the property around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Don't have your moving van there at 8 a.m. on the day of closing. Right? We'll warn you about that.
We do go over that. I warn them that too. Yeah. Please don't order your moving van on the day of closing, because it might not close for some reason. You might have to wait till the next day. And if it's a Friday, you're waiting till Monday, because we don't close deals on weekends.
And if everything goes smoothly, it's usually 2 or 3 o'clock when you own the property. That's if everything goes smoothly. And listen, 99% of the time, it all goes really smoothly.
Right. Here comes my next question: is that I haven't had it happen yet in my career where I walk into a house and there's a hole in the drywall, or like there's some fundamental damage to the house and we have to hold back cash for some reason, or we have to call you and say, Richard, it's not in the same condition. What's going on? How does that typically play out for you?
Yeah. So we had a great one. The client had a piano upstairs. During the move, the piano got dropped, broke all of the railing and a portion of the bottom of the staircase. Happened the night before closing. Clients come in the next morning, do their inspection. Staircase is a mess. So in that situation, what we usually do is we encourage the parties to immediately get someone in to quote to fix it. And then usually our recommendation is, let's say the quote is $2,000. We will ask the seller to give a credit to the purchaser for that $2,000. And if that's the case, that's the easiest way. And then the purchaser can just get that staircase fixed. That's usually the best way to do it. So we'll look after that for sure. And that happens, the funniest story I have is that the clients called me and said that the vendor had taken all the toilet seats. All the toilet seats, true story, all the toilet seats were oak and had replaced them with plastic. And the purchaser wanted the oak toilet seats, not the plastic
But it
ones.
wasn't in the agreement.
It wasn't. No. We had a dispute. I think we settled it because everybody agreed that the lawyers would cost more money than probably the oak toilet seats at the end of the day.
I heard a story with the developer that it wasn't my client, but a realtor told me this, that their client bought a brand new home purchase. And the developer, because it wasn't in the APS, took the sod. So when they pulled up on closing day on $500,000 new build.
Yeah, I think you'd have a tough time with me if I was a lawyer. If I was a lawyer on that one, you'd have a pretty tough time.
They got it back. Obviously, they got the sod back, but you just think like, what are you doing?
In addition to doing real estate, I do a lot of real estate litigation, which I think really gives me a bit of an upper hand when things like that happen.
Yeah,
because I can pretty easily give advice as to what your options are through the courts, immediate, long-term, cost, which helps people make decisions as we go.
Yeah,
for sure.
My next question is, not a lot of people know about closing costs. I call them the kind of hidden payment of real estate. And in Nova Scotia, we have the 1.2 5% deed transfer tax, and lawyer fees as well.
Yep.
Also, so how do those work?
Yeah, so, deed transfer tax, the highest it'll be in any municipality is 1.5%.
Yep.
There are a couple of municipalities where it's less, and there may even be one or two where it's still zero, but they're few and far between. So you're looking at 1.5% of the value of the home, the property that you're purchasing, that has to be paid on the day of closing. Other hidden costs are, if you read the fine print of the agreement, which we will point out to you during the lawyer review, there's a fuel adjustment, which basically means that the fuel on the premises is going to be adjusted. So you're going to pay for a full tank of oil, which is $600 or $700. You're going to pay for a full tank of propane if it's there. As well, you're going to adjust taxes. So if the seller has paid the taxes for the year, you're going to have to reimburse them for that time that you own the property during that tax year. These are all kinds of costs that come about. Registering a deed costs $100. The government charges you $100 to register it. Registering your mortgage is $100. These are government fees. These are things that you just don't expect and anticipate. We break those down for you, give you a detail. We can get you an estimate within $100 of what it's going to cost you on closing day. And if you need that in advance, we'll get it for you. The other hidden cost, I guess not really a hidden cost, is title insurance, which has become very, very popular. The good news about title insurance, it's way less than getting a survey and a tax certificate. It's still on a new purchase between $250 and $350. Banks require that nowadays. So,
Okay.
We're going to talk to you about that, explain the policy to you, and then with your okay, purchase that for you as well.
So what is title insurance?
So title insurance is really, in the old days, but when I started practicing, a lawyer certifies to you that you own the land. I have no idea where the house is. If the house isn't on the land, there's nothing I can do because I visually am not a surveyor. So what used to happen is you used to get a surveyor to go out, certify that the home was on the boundaries of the land. That cost $400 or $500. Nowadays, you have insurance that says, hey, if the building isn't on the land, we'll fix it, we'll reimburse you your money, we'll move it. They've also covered other things now, zoning violations if it's residential, issues with respect to taxes outstanding and other types of adjustments and betterments. They now cover those things if a mistake is made at the time of closing. So honestly, best way to go.
Yeah, of course.
Insurance. And the other thing I can tell you, pretty well every lender, Royal Bank, Bank of Nova Scotia, Bank of Montreal, TD, all of the lenders, they require it.
Oh,
So
awesome.
It's not really optional these days.
Now, what is title? Because not all people are familiar with that term either.
Yeah, so title is a legal concept, basically making sure that the person who's selling you the property owns it, and making sure that when they bought it, they got it from somebody who owns it.
Yeah.
And making sure that that person got it. You've got to go back 40 years to clear title. Nowadays, it's all automated and the government keeps track of it all. But we, as real estate lawyers, are in the system. We've taken the course, allowing us access to the system. We can go in and look, make sure your title is okay. In other words, if you're buying a home from Mr. and Mrs. Smith, making sure Mr. and Mrs. Smith own it.
And there's no liens against the property as well.
Right. If there's a mortgage, we're going to find it. If there's a builder's lien, we're going to find it.
Yeah,
That's
of course. Right. Okay. Now, when it comes to buying, I'm going to keep hitting buyers because it's such a great time to buy a house in Halifax.
For sure.
When we work with a buyer, are there questions that they have that are common that are not common knowledge? You know what I mean? Like you get someone in front of you and they start asking about something that always comes up that's never discussed.
Yeah. So probably the most common question that we get is, when can I move in?
Yeah.
That's probably when do I actually own the house? And the truth is, you don't own it till later in the day. In fact, unfortunately, if you decide to buy a house on the last Friday in June, it might be 6 o'clock in the evening before you actually own it. I mean, depending on how busy the law firms are. And quite often you have to remember that the vendor who you're buying the house from is also buying another house They need to sell their house before they can buy a house. And sometimes there can be a chain of 4 or 5 in a row, and they all need to fund, and they all need to go perfectly for everybody to close. That's the most common question we get. The other question we get, is we get questions about legal fees. And I encourage people to ask those questions because lawyers aren't cheap. I mean, I had a client in my office the other day, and she said to me, if I give you $500, will you answer 2 questions? I said, sure. What's your second question? Sorry, Jason. That's the only clean lawyer joke I know. But if you don't ask, you may not get the explanation. So tell me a little bit about your property and ask me what it will cost.
Yeah.
Ask me if you call me 10 times a day. I hope you don't, but if you do, does that cost extra? Ask me if your interest rate changes 2 days before closing and you have to redo documents, does that cost extra? It doesn't in our case. We do the work again for you. Did one yesterday. Guy came in, redid his mortgage. He's saving $1.50 biweekly. We redid his whole mortgage because his interest rate went down. Hey, he wanted it done. We did that. So these are the questions that we get asked the most. And the other question we get asked that we don't comment in is, what do you think? Is it a good deal? We don't comment. We will not comment on whether or not we think you're getting a good deal, unfortunately.
I love it.
Even if we think you are, we're not going to comment on that.
And if you don't?
That's right. We don't comment either way.
Now, you and I worked on a deal last year together that, it was my first time working on an investment property deal. Learned a lot. When it comes to someone who wants to buy an investment property, what are you looking for when someone looks to do that purchase?
Yeah, so not unlike a residential property, first question, what are you doing with this property?
Yeah.
If it's 3 units on the peninsula, what are you doing with it? You're going to rent it out exactly as it is? Or the basement that's vacant, you want to renovate that and add a 4th unit. You want to make the units bigger. You want to turn it into 2 units. We ask you what your intentions are with the property first, because with investment properties particularly, we want to make sure that you can do with it what you want to do with it.
Of course.
What your plans are. Because a lot of people think, 3 units, it's a great deal. I can turn it into 4 units, it's even a better deal. You need to make sure you can do that before you buy.
A lot of people also think that zoned R2, I can do what I want.
Or that allows me to turn 1 into 2.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't. I mean, occupancy is the key. Every specific building must be approved for the use, no matter what the zoning. If you're zoned R3, you can't take what is there and turn it into 3 units. Everything must be approved. So we're looking for occupancies, permissions, are you grandfathered? All the particulars we're going to look at to make sure you can do what you want with that property.
Now, you taught me this last year. Yeah. And through zoning and occupancy permits, was that you and I were looking at this student dwelling in South End, Halifax, and 2 of the windows didn't meet egress. For those of you that don't know what egress is, your window has to be a certain width and height so that a fireman can get in with his backpack on to save you. And if a window in a bedroom doesn't meet egress, it's not a legal bedroom. Both those bedrooms in the basement that didn't meet egress were both rented out at $600 a month a piece. Now, what I didn't know that you taught me was that you were fined if our client had purchased that home and someone had complained and found out that he was renting 2 illegal bedrooms. The fine was $600 a day.
Yeah, I think it was a little less. But what you don't when you read the legislation, it says per occurrence, and then it says per day. So let's say it's $100 per occurrence. You're like, 2 bedrooms, $200. No, $100 per day per occurrence. So $200 a day. Multiply that for a year, 365 days. Do the math.
Yeah,
it's huge numbers. I actually did a case years ago. A gentleman had a rooming house, 20 rooms. It was only approved for 10 or 12. He read the legislation, thought, $100 per, I'll pay the $1,200 fee and be on my way. And then he got the bill for, $85,000 or something, or $35,000, whatever it was. Anyways, came to me at that point, a little bit too late. We actually took that to the Supreme Court and were successful in arguing that there's legislation that allows, if fines become unreasonable, for you to adjust that fine down.
Okay.
The funny story there was that it's for people who can't afford the fine. So in the end, judge agreed with our interpretation of legislation, which helps lots of other people, but the legislation didn't apply to our client, who was a bit too wealthy. So at the end of the decision, it was a funny story. He says to me, "We won, right?" I went, "Yes, yes. The judge agreed with us 100%. He just didn't agree it applied to you." So,
oh no.
yeah, that client paid significant penalties
Yeah.
to HRM for operating a roomy house.
And that's why when you're purchasing a income property or investment property, like, you need to get zoning confirmed. You need to get occupancy permits confirmed. And if you're doing any renovations, building permits.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter what the person who owns the building right now is doing. The fact that he or she isn't getting caught is not relevant. It's not. Well, they've got 4 units, yeah, but it's only approved for 3.
Yeah. With building permits, you told me a funny story about, one time you did
Yeah, you really, real estate law requires so much experience. And I had a property on the peninsula that I did a substantial renovation, and the HRM showed up and began, I got into a bit of a dispute with them about how I needed a building permit. I was putting in some light fixtures, and I said, "No, of course I don't." And they were fairly expensive light fixtures, and we were putting in a lot of them. And about halfway through the process of me saying, "I'm not getting a building permit, this is ridiculous, they're light fixtures," I thought I'd ask him how much the building permit cost, and it was $38. At which point I quickly wrote the check for $38, got my building permit. Because, a lot of times it's better, well, in all cases, it's better to follow the process.
Yeah.
Get the building permit, get it done properly, get the inspections, and get everything approved.
I also say this, it's never as much as you think it is.
No, it's not. It's building permits and fees and stuff are usually fairly reasonable.
Yeah.
Contractors and builders, that's a little different story. But basically, the fees that HRM charge, in most cases, are quite reasonable. That's right.
Yeah, and I always say that it's never as much as you think it is, because I've had this happen many a time where we've done an inspection and found that the home is flawed and it needs to be redone. And clients immediately go, oh no, that's $10,000, $20,000. Hold on, we'll call a professional, get a quote in. It turns out it's 6, 7, 8. Then you go back to the table to say, listen, you guys are leaving. We understand you've had this house for 25 years. You got the life expectancy of the roof. We're moving in. How about we'll settle at 5, 4, 5, 6, so that you're not paying for a whole new roof that you're not going to live in.
Yeah.
But the buyers aren't out of pocket for, $8,000 for just for a brand new roof on top of the $250,000.
Yeah, I mean, that's really good, Jason. You got to be practical, right? you got to be realistic. It's real estate. You're trying to close the deal. It turns out the roof leaks and it's $10,000 for a new roof, but that's going to give you a good roof for the next 20 to 25 years.
Yeah.
So maybe $10,000 isn't the right number. Maybe, as you say, it's a little bit more realistic. And if you're realistic in your goals and expectations, we can help you and get you through that and make sure everything goes smoothly.
Yeah, because a deal only comes together when a buyer and seller are satisfied.
Yeah, and it sometimes takes a little imagination. You've got to work and figure out what's going on. And a good experienced real estate lawyer, he or she will get you through it. And, there are lots of good experienced real estate lawyers around. I really encourage you to find one when you're doing a transaction. There's nothing like experience when it comes to real estate. If I can probably put in my right hand what I learned in law school about real estate. And 90% of it's totally useless.
Yeah.
Right? What I learned was in the last 35 years.
Of course.
When a deal goes sour, when an occupancy isn't good, or a property isn't zoned accordingly. That's how you learn this stuff.
Now, here's a question for you. Can you name a deal that wouldn't have come together without your intervention?
Yeah, I mean, we a lot of times have to be practical, as we talked, and use a bit of imagination, a little bit of savvy in trying to get a deal. So I had a cottage down on the South Shore that an individual was scheduled to close on the Friday. It turned out there were some title issues.
Yeah.
My clients, it's July 1st weekend coming. They want to use the cottage. The other people are moving out of province. They're gone. So what I did was I thought, okay, they really want to occupy this cottage. You know, this title issue may take a month. Let me have a look at it and see what the problem is. So I got the other lawyer on the line. He sent me over the documentation. I went through it. I agreed with him. It could be solved. It was going to take a bit of time, but he had a plan. The plan was something that could be done. So I said, look, your clients are gone. They're out of province. My clients would like to use the cottage. We entered into a lease for 2 months, $1 a month for July and August, close the property in September. Everybody wins. The lease protects their interest. The agreement is extended. I know he's going to be able to fix it. I'll help him if he has to. They ended up owning the property in September, leased it for the months of July and August, so they got to use it. Yeah, these are the sorts of things that we come up with.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Now, before we go, you've said that finding a good real estate lawyer it's a key fundamental for anyone, right?
Absolutely.
Now, when it comes to finding one, are there any tips or tricks you can give someone as to when they're asking questions, what questions to ask?
Yeah, you know what? Listen to your agent. Honest to God. I mean, agents want to work with lawyers that get deals done, right? It's self-serving. It makes sense. You want to work with a lawyer. If you recommend me, you want me to return your client's calls. You want me to get things done on time. You want me to get the deal closed. That's why you're going to recommend me. Listen to your real estate agent. He or she will have a working relationship with 1 or 2 lawyers. Those are the people you should be going to. You know, you may have your Uncle Bill or your nephew just got out of law school. If your real estate agent recommends somebody, I encourage you 100% to go with those recommendations. Absolutely.
Okay. Any final words before we get out of here?
No, listen, don't hesitate to call a lawyer when you have a question about real estate. Even before you're saying, you know, I'm thinking about buying a house, maybe in the next 6 months, I've almost got the down payment and the closing costs saved for. You've got a question, pick up the phone. I'm sure you'll say the same thing. You want to talk to them as early in the process as you can. The earlier you talk to the lawyer, the earlier you talk to a real estate agent, the better off prepared you are. And guess what? If you pick up the phone and call me and ask me some questions about a property you might buy in 6 months, you don't get a bill, right? I'll get the deal when you buy it. So ask the real estate agent, ask the lawyer, ask the questions and ask early and ask often.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's my advice.
All right, Richard. Thank you so much for coming on today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Hey, thanks for having me. I enjoyed it.
We'll get you on again.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. If you want to get in touch with Richard, you can reach him at 902-456-6071 or richardbureau@morrisbureau.com. And if you want to get in touch with me, you can reach me at 902-220-7357 or jason.paul@kw.com. Thank you. Bye.